Before the world knew him as Salt Bae, before the gold-covered steaks and viral memes, he was just Nusret Gökçe, a skinny kid from a forgotten mining town in Turkey. Born into poverty with barely enough to eat and no clear way out, his early life was anything but glamorous. His father worked long hours in a coal mine, barely scraping together enough to support a family of 7. School wasn't even an option, past the basics. Nusret dropped out at just 13 years old. While other kids his age were still figuring out how to play soccer, Nusret was grinding 13-hour shifts in a cramped butcher shop in Istanbul, every single day, without a break. No holidays, no weekends, no excuses, just raw meat, cold floors, and the constant pressure to keep up. But something about it clicked. He wasn't just cutting meat. He was studying it, mastering it. Over the years, he bounced between restaurants across Turkey, absorbing every skill he could. Still broke, but now obsessed, he somehow managed to borrow $3,400 from a bank in 2007. A massive risk for someone with nothing. He used it not to escape poverty, but to double down on his obsession. For the next 3 years, he traveled across Argentina, the US, and beyond, learning everything about steakhouse culture. No connections, no translator, no luxury, just one mission: figure out how the best in the world did it and do it better. By 2010, he was back in Turkey with just enough savings and confidence to open a tiny steakhouse. 8 tables, a few staff, no buzz. Most people didn't notice, but the few who did, they never forgot. For 6 years, Nusret quietly built his reputation among Istanbul's elite. Word spread about the precision of his cuts, the tenderness of his steaks, and the flair with which he worked. Then one ordinary day in January 2017, he posted a 36-second video that would rewrite his entire life. Wearing a tight white shirt, dark sunglasses, and a look of total confidence, he carved a sizzling tomahawk steak with surgical focus, and then, with a flick of his wrist, sprinkled salt down his forearm like he was painting a masterpiece. The move was so ridiculous, so specific, so weirdly elegant, it broke the internet within hours. Millions of views, thousands of memes. And just like that, Salt Bae was born. The video didn't just go viral, it became cultural. Black Twitter crowned him an instant legend. Celebrities dressed up as him for Halloween. Professional athletes copied his signature move during goal celebrations. TV shows parodied him. His face was suddenly everywhere, and the world couldn't get enough. But what made the meme explode wasn't just the salt. It was the attitude, the slow-motion flamboyance, the precision, the ego. People weren't just watching a guy season meat, they were watching a performance, a brand, a new kind of fame that didn't come from talent shows or Hollywood auditions, but from knowing exactly how to go viral. And Nusret knew. He knew this was his shot to turn a butcher's blade into a billion-dollar brand. While everyone was laughing, reposting, and doing the Salt Bae pose, he was already making plans. While the internet turned him into a meme, Nusret turned himself into a global franchise. Just weeks after his video went viral, he announced luxury steakhouses opening in New York and London, 2 of the most competitive restaurant markets in the world. No gradual rollout, no slow expansion, just straight to the top shelf. But these weren't just restaurants, they were temples of extravagance. The menu read like a dare. $100 burgers, $10 cans of Red Bull, $25 desserts. And the crown jewel, a $1,800 tomahawk steak coated in 24-karat gold. Not seasoned differently, not cooked uniquely, just wrapped in gold leaf, a flex on a plate. It didn't matter. People lined up for it, not for the flavor, but for the moment. To be part of the show, to film him doing the move. Because by now, Salt Bae wasn't just a chef, he was an attraction, a human meme standing over your dinner. Week after week, the elite flooded in. Leonardo DiCaprio, David Beckham, Lionel Messi. Every selfie with Salt Bae made the next guest want a piece of the spectacle. He posed like a rock star, moved like a magician, and smiled like a man who knew he owned the room. And the money? Unthinkable. In just a couple of years, he went from butcher to international mogul. Luxury locations popped up in Dubai, Doha, Miami, Mykonos, each one louder and more lavish than the last. But behind the marble counters and gold-trimmed menus, something was off. The experience was dazzling, but the food? Not so much. Critics weren't raving at all. They were raising eyebrows, and while fans cheered in front of the camera, the knives were already coming out behind the scenes. As Salt Bae posed with celebrities and flaunted receipts like trophies, the people actually eating at his restaurants were starting to speak up, and what they said wasn't flattering. In London, his flagship steakhouse quickly became infamous for all the wrong reasons. Online reviews tanked, dragging the place down into the bottom third of all restaurants in the city. One customer called it a glorified tourist trap. Another simply said the food, tasteless. The vibe, awkward. The bill, insulting. 2.9 stars on TripAdvisor. Hundreds of reviews calling it all show, no substance. Under-seasoned steaks, cold sides, rushed service. The kind of feedback you'd expect from a place trying to cut corners. Not one charging more than a month's rent for dinner. And it wasn't just London. His burger joint in New York was ripped apart by critics. Words like rubbery, flavorless, and shoe leather became common refrains. One headline bluntly called it the worst restaurant in the city. You'd think a world-famous chef would see these reviews and hit the brakes, maybe fix the food, rethink the pricing, improve the service. But Salt Bae didn't flinch. He doubled down on himself. Instead of addressing complaints, he posted even more receipts showing people dropping $100,000 on a single meal. He began calling himself an icon. Now every kid wants to be Salt Bae, he bragged. I'm an inspiration. The message was clear. The food didn't matter. The customers didn't matter. The performance was what mattered. And as long as people were still taking videos and chasing selfies, he was untouchable. Or so he thought, because while Salt Bae was busy building a brand around his ego, reality was quietly preparing to bring it all crashing down. By 2018, Salt Bae had become a walking brand. He didn't just serve steaks, he sold moments. The restaurants were theater, and he was the main act. But when the show crossed the line into real danger, things took a turn that even his Instagram couldn't spin. It started with fire, literally. At one of his restaurants, a stunt meant to impress guests went horribly wrong. A chef attempted a fiery presentation at the table, but the flames burst out of control. 4 people were injured, including Czech influencer Tinus Tresnikova, who suffered third-degree burns over more than a third of her body. She spent months in the hospital and her appearance was changed forever. Salt Bae's response? Nothing. No apology, no acknowledgement, no public concern. He acted like it never happened. And while his customers were recovering in burn units, he was busy serving up luxury to someone else. A dictator. Just weeks after the fire, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and his wife showed up at Salt Bae's Istanbul location. As most of Venezuela starved under a collapsing economy, Salt Bae served them a multi-thousand-dollar feast with a smile. Gold steaks, cigars, sparkling water, all documented on social media by Salt Bae himself. The backlash was immediate. Protests broke out in front of his U.S. restaurants. Venezuelan citizens, furious and starving, stormed Twitter with messages of disgust. Even the U.S. Senate chimed in. Senator Marco Rubio called him out publicly. I don't know who this weirdo Salt Bae is, but he's hosting the overweight dictator of a starving nation. Salt Bae quickly deleted the videos. But true to form, he never said a word. No explanation, no apology, just silence, like nothing ever happened. But this time, it wasn't just a bad review or a disappointed customer, it was an international scandal. And more importantly, it was the first sign that the world wasn't laughing with Salt Bae anymore. They were starting to laugh at him. The gold steaks and celebrity selfies were just the surface. Beneath the glitz of Salt Bae's empire, something far darker was festering. A toxic culture of fear, control, and exploitation that his customers never saw. But in April 2023, it all came spilling out. That's when Business Insider released a scathing expose built on interviews, lawsuits, and first-hand accounts from dozens of former employees. The picture it painted wasn't just unflattering, it was disturbing. Salt Bae, the smiling showman, was described behind the scenes as a tyrant obsessed with fame, power, and total control. One former manager summed it up bluntly, his world was nothing but Instagram and sensation. He believed he was untouchable, like a god. Staff were reportedly fired on the spot for tiny infractions. Dropping a glass, wearing the wrong shirt, or even speaking out of turn. A bartender in London compared it to the Hunger Games. Another called it a dictatorship with meat. But it didn't stop at micromanagement. Employees said they were forced to stage fake crowds outside during slow hours to keep up the illusion of popularity. During the COVID lockdown, some were made to sleep inside the restaurant overnight, unpaid and trapped. And while Salt Bae flaunted diamond watches and six-figure dinner bills online, workers say he was robbing them blind behind the scenes. Several lawsuits accused his management of stealing tips, sometimes up to 3% off the top, other times withholding them entirely, especially when high-profile guests were dining. One 19-year-old food runner said she had $140 deducted from her pay after delivering a doggy bag to the wrong table. Another employee claimed They lost $800 in tips just because a customer dined and dashed, as if it was their job to chase people down in the street. But for the women who worked there, things got even worse. Multiple female employees alleged sexual harassment, discrimination, and humiliation. One bartender said she was ordered to wear a short skirt, heels, and a revealing top on her first day. When she refused, male coworkers began harassing her, even following her home. When she complained and asked for a standard uniform, she was fired. Another lawsuit claimed a female server was denied a promotion because Salt Bae himself allegedly didn't find her attractive enough. And it wasn't just the staff who were misled, customers were lied to as well. Employees were told to pour leftover wine into fresh glasses, sell cheaper meat as premium cuts, and falsely label steaks as halal, just to squeeze more profit from every table. The whole operation, one former employee said, was never about food. It was about milking people for as much money as possible and making Salt Bae look like a god. But gods don't stay worshipped forever. And as the lawsuits piled up and the truth began to spread, the empire wasn't just rotten on the inside anymore. It was starting to collapse in public. If there was one moment that truly shattered Salt Bae's image, not behind closed doors, not whispered in lawsuits, but in front of the entire world, it was the 2022 FIFA World Cup final, December 18th. Argentina had just won one of the most dramatic championship matches in football history, defeating France in a heart-pounding penalty shootout. The players were in tears, fans were in disbelief, and Lionel Messi, a global icon, had finally secured the one trophy that had eluded him his entire career. Then, out of nowhere, Salt Bae walked onto the field, not as a guest, not as part of the team, but like a man who thought he had just won the World Cup. He weaved through security, shoved his way into players' personal moments, and, in a scene that immediately went viral for all the wrong reasons, grabbed Messi by the arm mid-celebration, practically begging for a photo. Messi, clearly uncomfortable, tried to pull away, but Salt Bae didn't stop there. He then got his hands on the actual World Cup trophy, a sacred symbol that even players aren't allowed to touch without permission, and started posing with it like it was some kind of prop at his restaurant, holding it, kissing it, pretending he had anything to do with the victory. It wasn't just cringe, it was disrespect on a global scale. The internet exploded. What is he doing there? This is shameless, ultimate clout chaser. Memes mocked him, commentators dragged him. Even die-hard fans who once idolized him were now publicly embarrassed on his behalf. FIFA launched an investigation within days. The verdict? Salt Bae had no official clearance to be on the field. As a result, he was banned from all future FIFA events. That ban? Still in place. And just when you thought it couldn't get more pathetic, in 2025, he tried sneaking into the UEFA Champions League after-party. This time, security didn't hesitate. He was publicly removed and humiliated again, left standing outside the event he once might have been welcomed into. Trying to save face, he signed autographs on the sidewalk and claimed he was only there to meet his thousands of fans. But no one bought it. Not anymore. The cameras that once celebrated his presence were now zooming in for all the wrong reasons, and the man who once owned the spotlight had officially become the punchline. The man who once turned steak into spectacle is now just a shadow of the brand he built. After years of viral fame, celebrity selfies, and headline-grabbing arrogance, Salt Bae's empire is collapsing. Slowly, quietly, and painfully. In the US, most of his steakhouses have shut their doors for good. Once hyped as elite hotspots, they now sit on real estate listings, reminders of a moment that came and went. His London location, once infamous for gold steaks and eye-watering prices, is bleeding profits, with reports showing a 50% drop in revenue. Even his Dubai flagship, once the crown jewel of the brand, is struggling to stay relevant. His Instagram numbers have plummeted. Engagements are down. The comment sections that once flooded with fire emojis are now filled with mockery, sarcasm, or worse, silence. The internet that made him famous has moved on. And maybe that's the worst part. Not the backlash, not the lawsuits, not even the bans, but the irrelevance. Salt Bae didn't just fall, he vanished from the cultural conversation. People stopped caring. The spotlight he clung to so desperately has turned cold. He's now seen less as an icon and more as a cautionary tale. Because the truth is, Salt Bae had everything. The story, the timing, the brand. He could have become a household name for decades, a culinary celebrity on par with Gordon Ramsay or Anthony Bourdain. But instead of building something lasting, he built a circus around himself. He didn't care about food, he cared about being seen. He didn't uplift people. And he exploited them. He didn't grow with fame he drowned in it. In the end, the same thing that made him, the meme, the ego, the obsession with image, is exactly what destroyed him. And while the restaurants close, the lawsuits stack up, and his name fades from headlines, one thing is clear. Salt Bae didn't get canceled. He burned himself out. Salt Bae's story wasn't just about food or fame. It was about how fast it can all disappear when the spotlight becomes more important than substance. He started with nothing, fought his way out of poverty, built something from pure grit, and for a brief moment, he had the world in the palm of his hand. But instead of growing wiser with success, he grew louder. He didn't build a legacy, he built a mirror, obsessed with his own reflection. In the end, it wasn't the critics or the scandals that brought him down, it was himself. Because when your brand is based on performance and vanity, there's only so long you can fake it before the world catches on. And once it does, it never looks at you the same again. Salt Bae could have been a pioneer, a chef turned icon, a story we admired. Instead, he became a meme that outstayed its welcome. But his story isn't unique. He's just one in a long line of viral stars who let the clout consume them. And watching it all unravel isn't just fascinating, it's a warning.
If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to Stars and Hypes so you don't miss what's coming next. I'd love to hear your thoughts on how things will continue. Drop them in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time, take care and have a great day.